the mind's always trying to make sense of reality, even when reality is melting around us, and it's somewhat bizarre and nonsensical.
Well, Jeanie, welcome to the Dream World podcast. It's so lovely to meet you. I found you on LinkedIn and I was pretty intrigued by your work. So I'll let you take it away, kind of give me like a rundown about what you do, how you got to the type of work that you're in now.
Yeah, you got it. And I'm super excited to be here, and thank you for having me. Yeah, so I am currently practicing as a therapist, particularly a transpersonal therapist. So I'm really concerned with altered states of consciousness, dreams, psychedelics, and how these experiences can impact us for our healing and growth. And on top of that, I'm licensed as a psilocybin facilitator in the state of Colorado. In my practice, expanded states are a normal, everyday phenomenon. And we weave in a lot of dream work with that. And maybe a little bit about how I got there, how I got into this work was just a lot of my own curiosity and fascination with altered states and my spiritual practice, and kind of being a seeker and always wanting to understand what's happening underneath our eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm excited to hear about some of the parallels with, dreams and psychedelics. But first, I'm curious, like for people that are maybe new to this type of therapy, how has it grown, and like what are some of the benefits and, uses for it?
Yeah, well, I think that psychedelic medicine has been highly stigmatized. It has a history of stigmatization, and it's been illegal. And quite recently, especially after Michael Pollan's book, like How to Change Your Mind came out, there was a lot of curiosity and fascination around what's possible in the field of psychedelic medicine as far as like mental health and spiritual growth. So I think during that time, and that was like around 2018, there was just like a psychedelic resurgence happening across the world, especially in the US. And now we're seeing that expand into really a therapeutic modality and legalization in certain states, in Colorado and Oregon right now. And it's been super helpful for treating depression, anxiety, PTSD, trauma, as well as just growth and expansion. I don't know if I answered all your questions there.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's, honestly such a powerful tool. And what type of medicines do you work with?
So right now I'm working with ketamine on the East Coast in like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York area. And then on the West Coast in Colorado, I can work with psilocybin under their regulated model.
Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. And so I have noticed that a lot of people, when they start to get into psychedelic therapy, it wakes something up in their dream life. Have you noticed any sort of like correlation with how it affects dreams?
Yeah, absolutely. What we'll notice is that typically before a psychedelic session, as the person's preparing over the course of a few days, and especially the night before, their dream world will become very alive. It's almost like they set an intention to dream, which they didn't. They set an intention to sit with psilocybin or ketamine, or even with medicines like ayahuasca and wachuma. Once you've set that intention, the dreams start coming and they continue to flow afterwards. So quite often when I'm working with someone, I'll ask them on the day of the session, did you have any dreams last night? And they might not have even been thinking about their dream from the night before. It might not even have realized how tied into the journey it will become, or how important it is and what wisdom it holds. But they're often like, actually, yeah, I had a crazy dream last night. And we start to unpack that before the journey. So it comes up all the time.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. And what about like afterwards? How does the integration process usually look like?
With the psychedelic journey or weaving dream into that?
Well, both, really.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of parallels in what the dream work process may look like after a dream and what the integration process would look like with after psychedelic facilitation. So after a psychedelic journey, typically the person's concerned about meaning making. What did I just experience? What do these symbols mean? What kind of narrative does that rewrite for myself? What am I being called to do after this journey? What's my new identity? Am I changing my identity? And I think we have a lot of those questions after a dream as well. Like, what did that dream mean? What does that say about me? What does that say about my identity? What do I need to do here? Do I need to finally quit my job? I keep having dreams about it every night. So there's a lot of parallels. I think ultimately, once we have these profound states, we are just in a state of questioning. We're in a state of meaning making. So that's how I would describe the integration process afterwards.
Yeah, that's an interesting parallel for sure. I can definitely see, like, a lot of similarities between this psychedelic altered state and a dream state. So what about during the, experience of like a guided psychedelic therapy? What type of, can you describe like the state that people may or may not enter? Because I know, for a lot of people, it might be related to like having out of body experiences or maybe even some sort of like dream type vision.
Yeah, I would say that, one way we might describe a psychedelic journey for someone who's never been in one before and they have no point of reference, I'll talk about dreaming. I'll say, just imagine yourself in a dream world, but you're actually awake, conscious for it, and you still have access to your body in the here and now. And usually in that experience, the person can be having that out of body type experience. They might be making contact with archetypal entities or reflections of themselves, or feeling like they have access to some kind of inner guidance or maybe a higher self that's guiding them through the experience. They may also feel a sense of sacredness during the journey. And they may lose sense of kind of time, space, reality, and the boundaries or constraints around that. They may experience a lot of somatic material coming up in the body, which I think is maybe one thing that dreams, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but maybe dreams don't have as much somatic experiencing happening in the body while they're happening. It's a little bit of an overview of what might be happening during the experience.
Yeah, and of course, I imagine everybody's different, so I try not to have people get expectations and things like that. But for a lot of people that maybe are feeling called to this type of therapy, maybe they, know that they have things that they can address with it or whatnot. How do you know if this is like right for you? Like, what is there anything to look out for if you're feeling interested in knowing more about it?
Yeah, well, it's definitely not the best fit for everyone. There's a few hard boundaries around certain diagnoses or medical conditions that would not make someone a good fit. For example, cardiac issues, uncontrolled high blood pressure, certain medications may not be a good fit. Beyond that, certain psychological diagnoses like maybe schizophrenia or bipolar disorder with active or recent mania. So there are some limitations in the work, and generally you would like the person to be in a relatively stable state psychologically or have access to support systems around them, friends, family, like therapist or other supports. it can be extremely helpful for people with addictions, yet at the same time, it's also something to be mindful of with a person with addictions, especially when we're working with ketamine. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, most definitely. That's kind of what I was thinking as well. Especially like on the mental health side of things. And what makes somebody like a good guide for this type of thing or
Interesting.
facilitator? Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I almost want to ask you the same question, like what makes someone a good dream worker and how do you know, right?
Yeah.
I could imagine that a lot of that is fit. Like when you meet the person and you feel that kind of connection, or you can feel something in the space that tells you, or you can feel something in the space that makes you curious of the person. That's usually the best indicator. But beyond that, um, someone grounded, someone competent, experienced in the work, someone with presence and attunement to really be with you in each given moment as it arises, being able to hold that. Um, Someone curious of your inner world and to help kind of be with you in the process afterwards. I would say attunement and just like high ethics and morality and good boundaries. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, it's, actually interesting that you say that because for dream work, I think is very similar. Just being grounded and compassionate, and trying to understand the other person's inner world without telling them, like, this is what your dream means or like, this is what you need to work on. So kind of removing myself as the expert, and just being there as a guide. Like I always tell people, I can't tell you what your dream means, but I can talk it through with you and help you figure it out. And I feel like there's some parallels there for sure, just like guiding people instead of like, telling them how they should feel.
Yeah, exactly. And I almost wanted to ask you, like, how does a dream worker work a symbol in a dream? Do they allow the person to find that meaning or do they help interpret? Yeah.
Yeah, ideally both. I mean, every dream worker has like their own style of how they do things. Some are more rigid than others. I tend to lean more towards the letting the person come to the conclusion on their own. Even if I were to tell them the same meaning, it's more powerful when they reach it on their own. Um, and, there can be archetypal universal symbols that we all can kind of relate to. But somebody might have a very personal, like snakes, for example. If they love snakes and they had pet snakes, it might mean one thing. And then if they hate snakes and they're scared of snakes, it could be something completely different. So I usually like go from like an asking questions perspective, like really trying to free associate with the dreamer, see what they might think about the symbol or what associations they have in their life. Really it's like a getting to know them kind of process. And that can sometimes take some time to really think about and process the dream as time goes on. Um, and a lot of like dream analysis techniques are just kind of like a little interview about the symbols and identifying which ones stand out. Um, and I also like to ask clarifying questions because, a symbol alone tells you a little bit maybe, but like once you ask about the environment and what was happening and how they were feeling, like the feeling is something that might, tell you a lot as well. Like were they, happy or upset or, whatever. So it can be complicated, I kind of don't try to analyze people's dreams. It's not my area of expertise because I don't think it's fair for me to tell them what their dream means, but I love a conversation and I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, absolutely. I notice with psychedelic integration as well, it's mostly hands off when it comes to interpreting any symbols or phenomenon that comes up. But I do know some facilitators who love to try and make meaning of what someone experiences in a dream. I mean, sorry, in a psychedelic experience. So
Yeah, and especially during the experience, it might be a little overwhelming for the person. But what if like they're asking you for advice or your thoughts during the experience while they're in this altered state? Maybe they're having realizations or coming to certain conclusions. Do you ever find that people try to like seek that validation or explanation in the moment.
Absolutely. I feel like the mind's always trying to make sense of reality, even when reality is melting around us and it's somewhat bizarre and nonsensical. The mind is looking for some kind of meaning. And I think many people come to these medicines really wanting to heal or really wanting to grow. So they want to have that validation and the meaning. They want to know what to do afterwards. I think we're always searching for the answer. Like, just tell me if I should turn left or right. If I just knew that I was doing the right thing, then I wouldn't have to worry. And oftentimes the facilitator might be at the other end of that question. Like, does this mean ... And you actually don't know as a facilitator. So you can't really answer that question. All you can do is just be there in the holding of it with them.
Yeah, that's a great approach. I think just being in that space and like offering, just the love and support for somebody. And as I'm sure it's similar with dreams and psychedelics, a lot of times the answers come later as you process it and think about it and sit on it for a while. So yeah, that's really interesting. So what if somebody is like, what are signs that somebody's maybe like resistant to it, or maybe they have some blockages or things that are kind of preventing them from truly taking it all in? What does that look like?
Resistance can show up in all kinds of trickstery ways. It's like the jester of the psychedelic experience. And sometimes it's hard to catch. Like, you might not know right away as you're facilitating, oh, this is a form of resistance. It can show up as continuous dialogue during the journey. It can show up as somatic experiencing in the journey. So maybe like shaking legs in the body, maybe a tightness in the body that can't release. It can also show up in like mind loops and thought loops. The mind is always trying to find something to hold on to while it's flailing in the abyss. And if it can just kind of hang on to thought loops or pattern loops, it creates some kind of safety and resistance to the free falling feeling. It may also show up as the person quite literally saying, I can't let go. I can't let go. What would happen if you let go? I would die. Like a sureness that if they let go, they would die. And what does letting go even mean? What does that even look like? That's hard to even answer.
Yeah, I definitely resonate to a lot of those things. I've experienced that. And would you say in this case, like, would it take multiple sessions to work through something like that? Or sometimes is it better to take space, before coming back to the psychedelic therapy?
Yeah, I think it all depends on the person and their psychological state and capacity and their own individual nervous system. Some people might need a lot of time and space to integrate something, or after a challenging experience to come back into their bodies to regulate the nervous system and experience safety again. And others who do have more capacity or the nervous system is regulated, they might go in for another session sooner than later. One of the benefits of that is that these medicines have the capacity to provide like a neuroplastic effect. So kind of like opening up the mind to neural pathways. And typically when we do multiple sessions of ketamine relatively close together, it kind of compounds that effect. Or with psilocybin as well, if you do like a high dose journey, 1 month and then the next month, it's going to open up the neural pathways more, but it's not always in everyone's best interest to do that. It just depends on where they're at.
Definitely. With a lot of these things, it's of course dependent on the person, and it's hard to give, one direct answer. But I've noticed a lot of people after, starting their psychedelic journey, they reach similar conclusions about the self and reality. And there's kind of like these archetypes of like aha moments, Is there any that you can think of that you can speak about that you've noticed across multiple participants?
Yeah, I feel like there's some reoccurring themes that we see after a psychedelic journey. Um, I think one major theme is just like the idea of flow. And how do we even describe flow? It's like this stream of consciousness where there's just ease, like things just coming together. I can just be. I can just be here. The kind of this like open, spacious flow to life itself, and being able to see the interconnection of all things and just it all flowing together and it all making sense. I think other major themes that we'll see is like the cycles of death and rebirth on the macro level and the micro level. You can see like something as small as like a thought being born and then destroyed in one's consciousness, and then as large as like the Big Bang, even cycles of like our own death and ego death and our own like birthing back into our bodies. Themes of timelessness, themes of, I think major themes of like the mother and father archetype coming up a lot, whether it's the mother in us, like a bigger mother, our own mothers, the father archetype as well. So those are a few.
Yeah, it's incredible how it really, connects us all. Although we have different experiences, like we can all relate to certain like archetypal journeys, and I think psychedelics really brings that out in like an interesting way. Um, are there any certain practices that you give people maybe to carry these insights into their I could say waking life, but into their life moving forward after the journey?
Yeah, I think many facilitators kind of have the go-to practices to help a person integrate and kind of continue to live the messages of their psychedelic experience. And that might be continuing to find moments of spacious openness, reflection, journaling, time in nature, really slowing down the nervous system to be. But a lot of what I might suggest to my clients is all about how we show up in relationship. Like if we have certain insights or certain learnings from the journey, how does that change the way that you relate to your loved ones, the way that you relate to yourself, how you relate to your community, how you relate to the present moment as it is? I'll actually encourage people to continue working with their dreams and to reach out to me if one stands out, because it's a continuation of the journey. Like the integration process is not complete unless we're also paying attention to the dreams afterwards. I'll just offer them to be kind and gentle with themselves through the process. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, dreams are like our inner therapist, so it makes sense that, they help people process and, integrate these lessons. Um, and so, yeah, let's talk about the dreams a little bit more. I know you had some notes. Is there any other exciting overlaps that you've noticed between the dream state and the psychedelic state?
Let's see. I was really fascinated by the idea of dream incubation because it almost mirrors the process of like intention setting for a psychedelic journey. And when I talk about dream incubation to some of my psychedelic clients, are like, no way. You can ask for a dream and then it can actually come to you. And for those who may be listening who don't know dream incubation, it is kind of like a ritual where you ask for a certain dream to come to you in order to kind of gain that wisdom. And with psychedelic medicine, usually before we go into a journey, we're doing the same thing. We're setting an intention, and it's almost like we're also asking the journey some question or some kind of guidance for our life that we can then apply to our life. And then after the dream incubation or after the intention setting, we have the journey or the dream, and then we're having this integration process afterwards, or we're working the dream. It's like we are intentionally going into another state of consciousness to help us comprehend or deal with current reality. It's almost like a timeout of life. Like, I did a timeout. I need some inner guidance so that when I return to this life, I can make another decision, or I have insight or wisdom and guidance of what to do next. So I thought those parallels were just so fascinating and often not talked about enough.
Yeah, that's a great point. And, with dream incubation, I see this a lot, when I'm guiding people that, it doesn't happen right away for a lot of people. It might take a couple of attempts to incubate a dream, maybe even months to, feel satisfied with the dream you received, or maybe it wasn't long enough or didn't make enough sense or whatever. So I always tell people to, give it some time. Do you notice this with psychedelic journeys? Like, what happens if the intention, maybe they feel like they didn't get an answer, or they didn't feel satisfied with the result of the intention, so to speak?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll also prepare my clients for the disappointment of the intention not coming to life, because often we may set the intention quite literally or verbally, or even write it down, but then the subconscious or the unconscious actually has a different intention. And I could imagine it's the same for dreaming. What we think that we want, or the way that we might receive it, might not make sense to the mind. Sometimes a person will come out of a journey like, that did not address my intention at all. And I'm like, really? Because like, if you have, and that's just why dream work is so important, because so many times I've had someone come out of a dream saying, like, a dream incubation in particularly, and say, yeah, I didn't dream about my incubation question. And then we work it in community, and everyone reflects the dream back, and they're like, wow, I didn't even think of that. It's often like that with psychedelic journeys as well, which is why community integration and working within community is just unlocks a whole nother layer, a whole nother perspective, and the kaleidoscope of what's happening. But we also kind of teach clients to hold intentions loosely. Like, we could set the intention, but also be open for whatever happens.
Yeah, that's good. Being open-minded is important. So it's good that you prepare them for that. And yeah, it's quite funny. I love how, the group talking about it, getting different perspectives on what you just experienced. Like with dream work, especially, you might be like, wow, I didn't even think about that until I heard it coming out of someone else's mouth. So, that's why, dream circles can be really cool. So do you think that like people can access these states naturally, or maybe after they've had a psychedelic experience, can they like re-enter that state in a way, almost like that mindset?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly been many um, instances of this happening, especially in ceremonial spaces with no plant medicine or psychedelics. Like, if you've ever gone to like a vision quest or a Sundance or a sweat lodge, like, we enter into altered states of consciousness way more often than we actually think. Like, just looking out at a sunset or having a really deep conversation with someone, we're like tuning into a field that feels very alive, and we almost can feel the presence of something with us. And often, maybe after like an ayahuasca or wachuma experience, in the days after, a person's feeling like the medicine is still in them. So it can certainly come up even with no medicine. And I could imagine that, states of meditation or certain breathwork experiences can also kind of bring us into this field of aliveness, interconnection, or an altered state.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I mean, I think it's waking up something that's naturally within us and just allowing us to connect. Um, and I'm also curious about something I love to ask people, which applies to both dreams and psychedelics. Like, where do you stand on like the science, spirituality spectrum? Because people might have experiences where they see a deceased loved one or they connect with these interdimensional beings. Like, where do you stand on that? Is it more like in our brains? Is it more like other dimensional metaphysical realms, or what do you think? There's no right or wrong answer, too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm inclined to say that it's both. Like, we are form and formless. And some of us chase the formless so much, forgetting that our bodies are part of the experience too. And some people are all body. And it's two perspectives that we have, but both equally important. Like, we go into these expanded states hoping to expand our consciousness, but also remembering that our body is actually holding the consciousness that we're expanding into. So our nervous system has to be in agreement. Like, if we expand consciousness too much, or we dive too much into the spiritual aspect of these experiences and don't focus on also kind of honoring the body's pacing, we'll end up with dysregulation or an inability to hold it. I think also on some level we can expand spiritually and have all these amazing, beautiful insights and feel enlightened and feel like we're so connected to the divine. And then when we actually kind of look at our patterns in our nervous system, it doesn't always match up. And quite the opposite too. We might not feel spiritually inclined at all, but our uh, our mind has been balanced. Like, the neurotransmitter system is coming into balance. So we feel a sense of calm, like we're walking in nature again. We just feel more grounded, more at ease. So it's just two ways of looking at the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. I love that answer. I think, I agree. They're both important. We are physical and spiritual. Some people are more on the skeptical side with both dreams and psychedelics, and I think that's part of the journey as well. Um, have you like where do you think the future of this is going? Like, I know there's still so much pushback, but where do you expect like both the research and the community aspect of it to go in the next, I don't know, decade or so?
Yeah. More and more research is being done with psychedelic medicine every day, and more funding poured into it, which is actually pretty beautiful to see, because then we can back up the benefits. So I think we'll continue to see more research. I think we'll continue to see more individuals being trained or curious or interested, in more organizations popping up. And I think we're moving into a space of psychedelic medicine or expanded states of consciousness actually become quite normal to the human experience. Like, it won't be something on the edges or something in subgroup communities. I think it's actually just becoming part of who we are in the US. And I think that will be more normalized. I do think it's going to be a major form of mental health therapy. I think we're realizing that more and more. And I also think that we might be moving in a direction of becoming more open to the idea of having a spiritual connection to something greater than ourselves because of these experiences, because of these medicines. I think, of course, we'll hit moments of pushback again and again, but we're still dealing with that stigmatization, but I think it's moving in a positive direction. And I think we'll learn more about safe, ethical care.
Yes, definitely. You're right. There's always going to be people that have a bad experience or that don't trust it or that are scared and maybe have their own blockages. I think that's inevitable. But I do think we're on the path towards helping the world heal, you know? I mean, we know the world needs it right now. And, you know, when people heal themselves from within, I think we can all show up better. So, you know, similarly with dreams as well.
Yeah.
Um, what
I
are
think
some resources? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'll just add one more thing to that.
Yeah, yeah.
As we do move more into altered states and more into psychedelic medicine, I think at some point, and who knows if that's going to be 100 years or 500 years, I do think there will come a point where the collective actually contracts and says, like, okay, I'm ready to be in the present moment now. No altered states, no mind expansion, no um, seeking for something more or different. But I think it will one day begin to contract again, and people would be more fascinated with just being in the here and now than going into that altered state. But I think right now we are in that expanded state. We are searching for something more, kind of expanding minds. But I think we'll cycle back. It's like that death and rebirth. And I think we'll come back to the body in a more grounded, present way.
Yeah. You know, that actually makes me think of something else that I should ask you, which is like, um, you know, to what percentage of people you think turn to this as like an escape or something to just kind of, you know, although they're seeking healing, because this happens with dream work too. People get into it just to kind of forget about their life.
Yeah. I think most of the time it's probably happening on an unconscious level. I don't think many people go to psychedelics for the escape because it is such an intense experience and like a confrontation with the psyche and emotions. They're just like, no, that's actually, in order to escape, they would not be doing that experience. Although there is a small percentage of people who do feel like they are kind of coming out of themselves and escaping from life. But I think more often the escape is more subtle in the sense of like we're always feeling like something is wrong with us or something needs fixing. I mean, not always, that's kind of a general statement, but we we're looking for the present moment to be different than what it is. And we heard that maybe psychedelics or plant medicine could help us with that. So therefore the seeking and the search begins. And it's almost like we're not escaping from reality in order to go into this medicine experience. We're kind of looking for an escape from ourselves, like the escape to be different than who we are right now, or to be a better version, or feeling that sense of lack. So I think it shows up in that way, but it's not necessarily conscious.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful way to put it. And it really gets at what I was thinking, you know? Within that escape process, you end up confronting everything about yourself. And it's really a beautiful thing, ultimately. And it's hard work, like shadow work and really growing. It's not easy, you know, it can be uncomfortable. So it's really important work that you're doing. Much respect to you and, you know, your journey. What are some like resources like that people can look into if they're interested on either the participant or the facilitator side of things?
Um, on the facilitator side of things, I mean, there's plenty of training programs coming out right now, and particularly in Colorado and Oregon. If you just hopped on Google, there's plenty of trainings. These programs tend to be a lot of a big commitment financially and time wise. However, there's plenty of local community actually that individuals could have access to. There's something called the Global Psychedelic Society. It's like a major website where they show you like the organizations all across the world that have local psychedelic community where they're doing kind of social circles, integration circles, education, harm reduction. They're all across the US and internationally as well. So that's a great resource to just meet like minded people. That's the first thing that I would do.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I love, you know, sharing, you know, different places that people can look into and, you know, just learn more about it. I think it's important to get informed. Um, and so before before we close off, I also wanted to see if there was anything else maybe that you feel like you wanted to touch on, or anything that's interesting to you lately that we didn't cover.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to ask a question about control and surrender.
Oh yeah, ask away.
I've in psychedelic facilitation, we're often taught that we should not control the experience, that we should just let go and surrender to what's happening without necessarily directing it. Um, and others feel differently. Others go into a psychedelic experience like, I need to know the answer to this question. Let me explore this topic, this topic, this topic. And they actually want um, directness from the facilitator they work with. There's many schools of thoughts on that. And with dreams as well, there's also this idea of like, if we lucid dream, should we control the dream? Or should we surrender into it? And I wonder, like, what's the consensus of that idea in dream work?
That is such a good question. It's kind of similar. There's both. I think there's a place for both. Um, and it's funny because, in a non-lucid dream, you take in what the dream gives you. You're just completely going with the storyline and the flow, unaware. And then when people get into lucid dreaming, they have this urge to just exert their ego on the dream. Naturally so, you want to control what you dream about. You want to dream about this, this, and this. You want to do all these things in the dream. And there is a place for that. It can be beneficial. But I think what some of my deepest lucid dreams have been when I just go with it. Like I'm just a conscious observer. So I'm aware of the fact that I'm in a dream, but I just kind of go along with the storyline instead of just, going the other way and trying to make the dream what I want it to be. It allows me to like take in more of the messages that might be hidden in the dream, get to know my dream characters. Like dreams can be so vivid that it's impossible to see everything at once, especially if you get tunnel vision on one part of the dream that you want to control or something. And it can actually destabilize the dream if you do try too hard almost.
Yeah.
So I tell people sometimes to try to just go with it as a conscious observer. And like a lot of people will find that the dream kind of has its own consciousness, like a greater intelligence behind the dream itself that helps co-create the scene of the dream. And sometimes when you let that, dream intelligence kind of do its thing, you can get a lot more out of it. So I tell people all the time not to get tunnel vision on lucidity and control, because all of your dreams have something to teach you. So I think it's a complicated question, but there's a time and place for both.
Yeah, absolutely. I know in my own dream practice, the times where I've become lucid and tried to control the dream, sometimes I'll just get kicked out of the dream. Like I
Yeah.
just end up like the walls fall down and I'm just in a black void and I'm like, is this another layer of the dream that I just unlocked? Or did I just get kicked out of the dream because I'm not supposed to be controlling it?
That happens so often. Like it's a phenomenon that I talk about a lot online. We call it the dream police sometimes. It's like these figures that they've told me before, like, you're doing too much, get out, or like, you're not supposed to be here. And some people are scared by this, they're like, what are we doing? But I think it's just kind of our subconscious, like checking ourselves, like, um, and that void period that you speak of is interesting as well. I think I don't know if it's like an in between type of dream. Sometimes for me, it's kind of like a space I enter before the next dream starts. But I'm also very curious about that and like what people's experiences are.
Yeah, yeah. It's a fascinating topic.
Yeah, it really is. I love all the parallels. But really, it all boils down to, what our brain is capable of, how we can use these tools to help us grow and, become better citizens of the world.
Absolutely. I just honor dreaming so much that I think it's just an essential part of the plant medicine experience. I feel like we're losing so much if we're not also bringing in dream to the prep and the integration process.
Yeah. Do you ever have dreams where you're like doing this type of work in the dream space?
Yeah, all the time.
I love that.
We'll be setting up for a group experiences or I'll have like a retreat coming up. And then the days leading up to the retreat, I'll dream about a medicine retreat. And then I'll tell my co-facilitator, listen, I'm expecting this to happen at the retreat because I have been having this dream about the plant medicine retreat. And I always like think like maybe it's not true, maybe this is just a dream, but then the experience will happen. I'm like, that's the energy that I saw in my dream that just came out in this experience that we're hosting. So it happens all the time.
I love that. Yeah. And sometimes our dream will show it in a way that we have our own filters and understanding of it. So it might, like you said, it's the energy that comes through, maybe not like the exact scene. But I also kind of have this belief that like the work we do in the physical also kind of mirrors the work that we do in these other realms. So maybe that people that are coming to you as participants, they've already been kind of spiritually working on this with you before you're even consciously aware of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've also had dreams about taking a plant medicine in the dream, like ayahuasca or wachuma, and then actually feeling the effects of the medicine in the dream. So having a journey within the dream, which is
That's so cool. Yeah,
amazing. Yeah.
that has happened to me too. What about lucid dreaming? Like, what do you usually do when you're lucid?
Um, so I'm a little bit of a rebel when I become lucid in a dream.
Love
Not
it.
I'm breaking all the dream rules about not controlling the dream. I'm usually trying to like figure out like who's the one making this dream? How does this dream work? So I'll look around and be like, okay, where am I? And I'll try and like pass the boundaries of the dream. Like what happens if I fly straight up? When does it stop? Where does it stop? What happens if I close my eyes and bring in a new scenery? What if I bring in my friend? Um, Sometimes I'm just like kind of wreaking havoc and like testing things out and being a little mischievous.
I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, me too. It's always fun to do that. And I encourage people to do that type of stuff without being scared because all of this online talk about like, don't talk to your dream characters, a lot of, especially like younger people that are getting into dream work for the first time, it makes them kind of scared to interact with the dream. So I think it's like a balance between just have fun, wreak havoc, but also take it in. So where can people find you and like, where are you online and people can reach out to you, that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So the best way to find me is my website. I keep it relatively up to date. It's www.jeanie.love. So JEANIE period LOVE. So that would be the best place. And that's where I keep all the information about my therapy services, coaching, and retreats or any psilocybin work.
Wonderful. Awesome. I'll definitely put your links and stuff in the description. But yeah, this has been a really interesting conversation. I appreciate you for coming on and you have such a calm, chill energy. So I appreciate the insight you've brought onto the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you as well. Thank you so much.